Good evening and welcome to Paranormal Evidence. I'm Tony Rathman.
I am Cherie.
I'm Chris Allgood.
Audra Keeler.
Ron Iacovetti.
Lourdes Gonzalez.
We have a very special guest tonight. Tonight with Entity Voices Paranormal Evidence is Sam Baltrusis. And Sam is the radio host and producer of Paranormal Rewind. He is a historian and is the author of historical ghost books. Sam has also been featured on Paranormal Nightshift and A Haunting on the Travel Channel. So welcome, Sam, to the show.
Welcome.
Yay,
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me. I loved it. I wish we could have recorded the conversation we had before the show.
We just hit play.
We can cover that all again, but one of the first questions, and I'm just going to flip over so I can see the audience comments, but one of the first questions I know our audience will want to know, and maybe even some of our team members, is I know that you had previously written books about hauntings in the East Coast, in the Salem area. How did you go from maybe writing about it to actually, because today you're actually involved in the paranormal. How did that transition happen for you?
Well, I was a journalist for about 20 years. I worked for radio. I worked in radio. I worked in print. I was like a magazine editor for a long time, and then I also worked in television in New York City for about 10 years. So I had a whole kind of a communication background. And when I moved back to Boston in 2007, I was like, I want to get back into print, and I really miss writing for newspapers and magazines. But I was freelance, so I would write the Halloween story that everybody writes. I wrote for a magazine called Stuff Magazine on hauntings in Boston, Massachusetts. It was the haunted hotspots in Boston, and that turned into my first book deal, which was Ghost of Boston, and that was back in 2011. And I've been writing books ever since. Sometimes I have like at least one book a year come out. Sometimes up to 3 books a year come out. So,
Wow.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
And you still have time to go hunting.
I do, yeah. So as we talked about before the show, ghosts. I don't hunt ghosts; ghosts hunt me. So it's kind of like I have a tendency of going with. I work with some of the best paranormal investigators in the field. We talked about some of them, like James Zanito, my co-host on Paranormal Rewind, Keith Bailey, who's out down in Texas. We investigate together, but I go in. I'm kind of like a barometer. So they'll bring me in. I will read the location. I'm like, over that's where the spirit is. I'm clairvoyant. And I will use my abilities to tap into the spirits at the location, and then they will investigate and get the evidence that they want to get to be able to investigate more. It's great to have that validation going along with what I'm picking up, which happens all the time.
Right.
But I definitely I don't like spending too much time at some of these haunted locations, mainly because I don't want to pick up anything and bring it home with me.
Yeah, no, exactly, and totally understand that. So when did you actually find out, or did you always know? When did the clairvoyance come into the picture that you understood you had a connection?
Well, it's been something that I've had since as I was a child. I always say that I was like Danny Torrance from The Shining as a child, and I was like Red Rum. And I had a lot of terrifying experiences when I was, up until about 10 to 11, to the point where I shut down, and I put on paranormal blinders for many years. Worked as a journalist and, was pretty successful. I always used my abilities out in the field. So if I was doing, say, like a investigative news story, I would use my abilities to kind of they're like, wow, that's amazing. How do you know that? I'm like, oh, I just kind of use my intuition to be able to do that. So I use my skill, I've used it my whole life, but I didn't use it in a paranormal sense until I started writing paranormal themed books.
Oh, wow.
That's amazing.
Wow.
So, Sam, question for you. What happened when you were 10 to 11 that made you shut it down? Was it an experience you had, or was it just too overwhelming, or?
Well, the first experience that I had was with my grandfather, and that was like earlier than 10. So that was when I was really young. My grandfather had passed. He was sitting on the corner of my bed. I thought I was talking to Santa Claus. I really did.
Oh,
And,
Wow.
and I was talking to this man, and I'm like, "Oh, it's Santa Claus," and he was smiling at me. He kind of actually looks like me. So, and that night I had a dream. So it was the dreams that I had. It was almost like a download that I got from the spirit realm of things to come, and that terrified me. It was kind of like apocalyptic and really scary, and so I just kind of shut down after that experience.
I'd like to ask too, because I think, especially with someone as seasoned and as in touch, like you have not just a wealth of experience as an investigator, but you also seem very attuned to what your gifts are and how they work. And so oftentimes we'll hear, like Chris had said, somebody maybe has an experience or they're overwhelmed, and they use the phrase, they shut it down or they turn the gift off. Is that, to your knowledge, is that in an individualized thing? Is there a way that like people can generally just kind of like, because we hear the phrase a lot, I shut it down, I tuned it out, but how is that done? Was it different for you?
Well, when I started getting back into it back like around 2011, I mean, really it was like 2007 when I started getting back into it. But so I started working the muscle, and when you work the muscle, it gets stronger and stronger to the point where you can turn it on and turn it off. As we talked about before the show started, I had a situation that happened a couple of years ago at an event in Salem. It was actually Topsfield, Massachusetts, at a very haunted location called Pierce Farm at Witch Hill. And there is Salem witch trials backstory to it. That's where Mary Eastie, who was one of the victims from the witch trials, hid before she was executed. So there was that whole backstory. But I was recounting a story of a gentleman, Richard Crowninshield, who committed a heinous crime in 1830 in Salem. He bludgeoned Captain Joseph White over the head with a large stick and stabbed him around the heart 13 times. So when I retold this story, I somehow started channeling him, and that was a gift that I had that I didn't really know I had. And then I basically channeled him, picked up the spirit, and took him home with me. And I was not there. So I kind of like was losing consciousness, going in and out of consciousness over an 8-day period. So that was the beginnings of me learning how to turn it off. So before it was kind of like, I would say like kind of like fun, not fun and games, but I felt like I knew I was tapping into my abilities, but when I had the attachment that kind of was like it's not a possession. James Anito would correct me. It was an entity manipulation, as he calls it. But the entity manipulation was very strong, and to the point where I'm very lucky to be alive. And as I was, so I was going in and out of consciousness. And this was featured on a haunting. I started basically like typing kind of like cryptic messages on social media, and I started like my eyes were dilating to kind of like black, and then I was just doing things that was not in character. And my friend Joni Mahan reached out to me, and she's like, "Sam, something is wrong." And I'm like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, and I wasn't there,
Right.
And
You're out of character.
I was out of character, and she's like, "Your eyes are dilating," and I was like levitating in my bed. It was like that bad.
Wow.
Oh,
Sam, did you say this? Did you say this went on for like 8 days?
Yeah, it was 8 days. It was
kind of serious.
Yeah, that's a long time.
It's a long
Yeah,
time,
right.
and it happened at it was October 30th, 2016, and I was doing an event, and I thought I was just like tired or sick from because I worked the whole October in Salem, and I also worked on the USS Salem, which is also an extremely haunted vessel in Quincy, Massachusetts. So I thought that I was somehow like kind of like just tired, like a paranormal hangover, but I was going in and out of consciousness. I would wake up and I was by my balcony looking down. It was horrible. And so Joni reached out to shaman Michael Robichaud, and he basically did a removal. And when that happened, my third eye opened, and I've been identified. I mean, I was empathic before, but I'm full blown clairvoyant now. I can see, I can hear. I would call what I do as a light trance medium. When I was under the influence, like when I was under with the entity, which we think was Richard Crowninshield, the guy that I was channeling, I was in a deep trance. So that it kind of mimicked a possession, like it was like a deep trance that I was in, and I wasn't able to push it out.
Right. And I mean, anytime you lose control about what you're doing, how you're acting, what you're thinking, what you can remember, yeah, that definitely borders on what's considered possession, way beyond obsession.
That's so true.
Or obsession, but yeah. So I mean, that's very thin line compared to what you're explaining to full blown possession.
Yeah.
So people are probably wondering right now, when that third eye opened, that made you more susceptible to spirits and entities and attachments. What do you do now to protect yourself that you didn't do back then?
Well, when that happened, first of all, I'm like, thank you, God, for protecting me, because I was just like, and I'll tell you, and I'm gonna get emotional. My grandmother, who's extremely Catholic, she basically was like throughout the whole a removal or exorcism, I don't know what you want to call it. She was there doing the rosary, so she was doing the rosary like in spirit form right by me, and knowing that my grandmother was there for me, she kind of became my spirit guide after that and my protection. You guys were asking earlier, like, who protects me? My grandmother. That woman died when I was a little kid, and she was a warrior, and she fought. She was like when this was happening, she was there for me. So my grandmother protects me, and that sounds kind of like my grandmother protects me, but
my grandmother does too, so it's okay.
Yeah, makes perfect sense to us. I mean, we know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the when it comes to the I have been put into really kind of dangerous situations. Lourdes, you were talking earlier about like seeing a spirit kind of jump onto your mother, and I had that happen to me too. It was actually related to the Conjuring House, and there was it was an entity. It was like a black mass, and I was at the Ocean State Paracon, and this was a couple of years after my attachment. But I saw this black cloud kind of like circle around the Heinzen family, and then also Adria Perrin and Roger, her dad. And I'm like, what the heck is that? And so anyway, this girl that was this young lady who's empathic, she went to the Conjuring House like the couple of days before. And this is in the early stages when they first owned the house. And that black mass was like swirling around everybody at this Paracon. And the girl came up to me, and it jumped from her to me. And I was like, and I'm like, oh crap, not again, And you thought you were surrounded by friends, but James was with me. He was actually with Carl Johnson, and then the shaman Michael Robichaud texted me out of the blue and was like, Sam, you're in trouble. And I'm like, how do you know this? How do you know I'm in trouble? I didn't post it on Facebook. So his spirit guides were apparently looking out for me too, and they reached out to Michael Robichaud. They did a removal. James did a blessing, and then deliverance. And I'll tell you, when that was just a couple of hours of kind of being under, but since then I'm severely, like, when I go into a location, even if it's not haunted, I'll put a shield of protection around me, because I'm finding that even if you think you're safe, you're not safe. You have to go with always be on the guard, because it could happen in the most unlikely of places.
Yeah. It changes when something like that happens. It changes you. It changes your thinking, your perspective on everything. Yeah.
Yeah. I had one attachment problem when I lived in Los Angeles, and it took a couple of weeks to manifest to the degree that it was noticeable. One shaman who got rid of it for me thought that possibly I'd gone to David Oman's house, which is like a B12 shot for the spirit world. It had enough juice in its battery to start doing stuff, and that definitely changed me. For a couple of weeks, I had to miss a couple of investigations of places I wanted to go to before I moved away from California. And the shaman, one of them got rid of it, and then my other one, a friend of mine, Pamela Dinkwitz, said take a couple weeks off. Don't engage, and take a couple weeks, just step back. And And it changed my perspective. The lesson that it taught me that was interesting, if you ever watched the news and you see like somebody is a surfer, they get bit by a shark, big chunk out of their leg, this whole story about what they went through. And then they go, and now he's back out on the water surfing again. You go, what is he, an idiot? And I thought that, but then when this happened to me, I'm like, you know what? I get it now, because you don't want anybody taking what your passion is away from you, something that you have a gift for, a propensity to do, you enjoy, you have something to offer that field, which you clearly do. You don't want somebody taking it away, so you learn how to cope, and you learn how to move forward and walk on your own again. But that's the growth that you get from it.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah, that's a great point. The one thing that I'm curious about, though, Sam, is the fact that you have a clairvoyance and you do things like the Estes method to be able to communicate and foresee things that have happened. How do you balance doing that and the protection? And when you put up the initial protection, do you find that blocks some of your ability to get the other answers? And how do you balance that aspect?
Well, so for example, I call it the Estes experiment. So when I do the Estes method, I go under. So I'm kind of going into a trance. So I use the Estes method, which is where you put on a blindfold and then you put on earphones, noise cancellation earphones, and then you use a spirit box. I like to use Spirit Box 7 because I feel like that to me has been the most effective out of all the spirit. I've seen people use Echo Vibe, other things as well. But anyway, so I kind of go into a trance. And so people are like, when I was doing my version of it, which is not the Estes that was established in Colorado, and Susan Slaughter was right by me. So to be honest with you, I had multiple people in the room with me, protecting me. So like not spirits, but physical people. Like they were like making sure that I was okay. And so my friend Danny Perez and Lauren Perez were in the room. I have a high priestess friend, Dana Masson, who was on the recording with me, and she was kind of guiding me through the trance. And when I was envisioning her, she was in the back of my mind. So people were like, "You heard her," and I'm like, "I did not hear her." And I was communicating with this woman that I didn't even, we have this strong connection. And so we were kind of going through this meditation, and Susan Slaughter was right next to me and asking questions too, who, by the way, she's amazing. She was an amazing investigator. And then Danny and Lauren were kind of there to protect me. And then of course I had people watching that were protecting me as well. So I have to be really, really careful.
Yeah, no, and I totally understand that. I actually have a clip that I took showing how that Estes method works, and you doing it with Dana. You mind if I play that real quick?
Yeah, that would be great. That would explain it to everybody.
All right, let me play that.
If I could do what he did in this experiment, I would get my family on Family Feud.
I agree. It's really cool.
Really fantastic.
This will give our audience a good idea of what it is that he's referring to if they're not familiar with this method. So, audience, here's a real quick clip. I think it's about maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes at the most, but it shows Sam doing this method with Dana. So here it comes. Maybe good. What, Ron?
Okay, I'm sorry. I was gonna say maybe good for people who watch who may not be familiar with this to punctuate how impressive this is. The experiment goes, he can't hear or see the other woman who's asking the questions or interacting with spirit. So when he says things, he does not have any knowledge of what's being asked or spoken to. He's just speaking what he hears come through clearly. That's so important to know in a setup for this.
No, you are absolutely correct. And that is a great point for them to understand. Yeah, Sam can't hear what Dana is saying. He's only repeating what he's hearing through the spirit box, and the spirit box obviously only he can hear, but he's giving the verbal answers of what he's hearing. So thank you, Ron. That's a great point to point out before I play this clip. Thank you.
And the evidence that you guys will see, those of you that are watching in this clip, is when Sam has a direct response to the question that's being asked, knowing that he can't hear her or see her, that is your evidence. That's an intelligent response.
Correct. All right, here comes that clip now.
Is there something that has been hidden that needs to be revealed?
Yes.
Is this having to do with 1692 in Salem, the witchcraft trials?
Murder.
Are you a man or a woman?
Doesn't matter.
Were you a victim of the witchcraft trials?
Yes.
Do you recognize me?
Sometimes.
Do you recognize Sam?
Of course.
Are you
What
from
about-
Salem? Are you from Salem? Are you from Salem Village? Are you okay?
So it's a male energy right now. It's not female. Creep. Crawler. Oh my God.
Sir, are you okay? My incense just started flaring up. I haven't added any either.
No.
Not okay. Could you tell me your name?
So I'm getting like heaviness on my chest, like severe heaviness.
Wow. You know, it for somebody who's maybe not, like you said, Ron, familiar with it, to be able to get response after response that's directly related to the questions asked when they can't be heard. I mean, that's incredible.
Yep. Yeah, I've seen that experiment done before, but that's so it's important to note for people watching also that the accuracy displayed in that clip is not average.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
Right.
not that expensive before. And we've gotten some relevant responses, but not like that. Those are almost every single question was responded to irrelevantly. It's crazy.
No.
So Sam, looking at between you and Dana, it looks like the backgrounds are different. Was she in a completely different room?
She was at her home, and so yeah. So I was at the Hawthorne Hotel in Salem, and she was at her home. And I'll tell you, she and I have this like weird psychic connection where we're able to channel each other. So that's why it was going. That's why it was happening. She was at a.
So she wasn't even at the same location that you were at.
She wasn't even at the same location.
Wow.
Wow, that's phenomenal.
That's crazy.
I love
That's
the
amazing.
testament that is to the that we talked on several times before, all of us in the past, about the application of science or principles of science to the phenomenon of spiritual stuff like this, right? So that connection and the fact that it executed with proof in that experiment it shows so much. For one, ESP or those types of gifts are not electromagnetic waves. They're not measurable by radio or transceivers, for one. And for two, unlike an electromagnetic wave, they don't have any degradation of quality that is taken down or ruined by distance. It doesn't fade with distance. So the fact that they were able to do that, I would bet they could do the same thing whether they were halfway across the world or within the same area. That's
right.
It's something that's not bound by those same principles of electromagnetic waves in communication.
We did the same thing when I was at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast. We did the same experiment, and it just worked. She and I are connected, and I to kind of give you our backstory, Dana came on one of my tours about 4 years ago in Salem, Massachusetts, and I was with my dowsing rods, and the dowsing rods kept pointing to her, and I asked a question like, is anybody here related to the witch trials victims? And it kept pointing to her. And she's from Canada, and I'm like, why am I drawn to Dana? And it turns out that she's a descendant of Elizabeth Howe, who was one of the witch trials. She did research right after that, and she's like, well, actually, my father's related to a woman named Howe. So basically, so long story short, she's a direct descendant of one of the witch trials victims. And then I found out that I'm related to the Putnam family about 2 months after that. So I'm related to the bad guy. So I'm related to the here and the Putnam family. So we kind of have this yin yang, like the victim related to the perpetrator, and she and I just kind of connected since then. We were on a show called Forbidden History, where we kind of we went back. I did a public apology for the sins of my ancestors, and she acted on behalf of the victims of the witch trials, and we kind of did this like apology ritual, as we called it, and it was very powerful. And after doing that ritual, we've been just like psychically connected ever since.
That's amazing. That's just amazing.
Wow.
For those who haven't seen too, the new show Paranormal Nightshift, which is fantastic. We have our friends watching tonight. Anthony Simonelli is on one of the episodes. Matthew Haas from Strange Oddities podcast is on one of the episodes. So we watched yours, and first of all, your storytelling skills are awesome. It was a great story. It was a great episode. It talked about a little bit of what you said there with being connected to the bad guys, so to speak. I wanted to ask, because you're the first person to know that's been on there. Like, they do casting for the recreations. When you see the person that they pick to be you, do you go, dial up the handsome, dial down this a little bit? Is there anything?
I'll tell you, like when I was on A Haunting, the man that played me is actually kind of a well-known actor. He's on a lot of the crime shows. But this gentleman, I mean, to be honest with you, I thought he did a good job. I think that he kind of didn't look like me, but with that said, I mean, the fake Sam has to go.
I love that. Big Sam.
For me, like I think Paranormal Nightshift was a fantastic show, and he did a really good job. The part that kind of made me chuckle a little bit was the recreation of the Entity with a hat. He kind of looked like a pilgrim a little bit. Like I'm like, the guy did not look like that. But they did a fantastic job.
She had a question for you based on something that happened in the story which was fascinating too. If you want to.
Well, I remember you saying that the Entity had red eyes, and Richard Estep. I apologize if I.
He's like a friend, yeah.
Yeah, he said that the Entity, because of the red eyes, was inhuman, but then as you go along with the story, you believe is one of the victims. So the contradiction, I was wondering, how do you feel about that? Yeah,
what is your gut feeling between those two? Where would you think that the Entity lies in that?
Well, Tony and I have kind of talked about this recently, but
basically, sorry about that, Sam.
but it was a man with a hat. So it was definitely a man with a hat. My first instincts, and when I recorded that show, I was like, oh, it must be tied to the fact that I'm related to the Putnam family. I thought maybe it was, like George Burroughs or Giles Corey. And, when Dana and I did the Estes Method session, that was only a couple of months ago. So what was coming from that was Giles Corey, was reaching out to me. So it could have been Giles Corey. And so it could have been a human at one point. But the fact that the Entity had red glowing eyes definitely does signify that it may be something a little bit more nefarious and possibly inhuman. And that Entity has stalked me in Salem for about a year and a half. And so it's been an ongoing thing. Like the the show they kind of like wrap it up. It's like, oh, he's gone, and because Sam apologized. No, it didn't go. It actually it got worse in a sense that Dana and I were out in the field recording Forbidden History. So we're filming for the show in January of this year, 2020. I started talking about the entity with a hat, and she felt like something was wrong, so she puts up a kind of like a crystal shield. And you guys asked earlier, like, how do I allow spirits to come in? The crystal shield is it keeps the bad stuff out and the good stuff can come in. So if it's just white light, nothing can come in. But if it's a crystal shield, it's like glass. Like the good stuff can come through the crystal shield. So she puts up a crystal shield right in the middle of Essex Street in Salem, Massachusetts. The entity growls and bites her. Now, at the time, we didn't know that she got bit. She knew that she was getting attacked. But the following day, she wakes up. She takes a picture of her knee, and she's like, "Sam, what is this?" I'm like, "Dana, that's a bite mark." Wow. So yeah, and it was bad. So long story short, a human, unless it's very angry, would not bite you, but an inhuman entity would. And so I kind of go back and forth. Is it the man with the hat, or is it feeding off my energy, which is what it said when we did the Estes method. It's feeding off my energy, and it's probably feeding off my remorse and my guilt and all the stuff that I felt about being related to the bad guy, and it's like, oh, let's get him because he has guilt, or maybe they want to get to me because I will be on television or I will write a book about it. They want to tell their story. So I'm still not sure. I'm still kind of like up in the air. The red glowing eyes was a little scary for me.
Yeah. Do you ever think that maybe it could be someone from the Putnam family, maybe?
And that's what we think too. Yeah, that's a good point. And so Dana thinks that's what Dana thinks. Dana thinks that it's related to the Putnams, and that it's so there. Ann Putnam. Thomas Putnam was her father. He actually, if you really want to put the bad guy label on anybody, it's Ann Putnam Jr., who was the afflicted girl and accused 62 people of witchcraft. It's her father, Thomas. And he was kind of like the puppet master. And if you look at his whole backstory in 1692, he was the one, he was in cahoots with Samuel Parris, who was the Reverend. And that's where the initial affliction took place of Abigail and Betty Parris. And that's also where Tituba, that's where she lived. So, yeah, I think that Thomas Putnam, it could have been Thomas Putnam. That's interesting that you say that.
Because that's what I felt, not that I'm clairvoyant or anything like that, but that's what I felt when I was watching it. It's just like that feeling that, I don't know, it's just, I don't know, I'm getting chills, but
It's like, and the thing is, like, the part that throws me though, Lourdes, is the red glowing eyes. Now, would a human have red glowing eyes? You guys talk about entities. Like usually you would say that's a sign of the man with a hat, shadow figure. But I think that this, and I talked to Mike Ricksecker a lot about this, and Mike is like, what did you think? What did you think it was when you first saw it? And I'm like, I thought it was a human. I did. I didn't think it was a shadow person. I thought it was a human. So I think that your instincts are actually probably right on.
Okay. Wow. Awesome. It's a very interesting story. I mean, it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, the episode was really good. The show was done well, and the story that you had to share with the show was fantastic. It was good.
Yeah, I agree. It was and well done, and just like you said, a fascinating story. But yeah, if I see red eyes on anything, that makes me nervous. No doubt about it.
Yeah, it was beyond hygiene. This was not hygiene curable.
Right. So, Sam, you've done a lot of work in the Salem area. I mean, you do tours. In fact, let me show our audience a photograph of you actually doing tours in the area, just so that they can take a look at it. Here, let me share my screen.
Careful, Tony, don't click on the wrong file.
Yeah, no, that won't happen.
He said Baltrusis correctly in the beginning of the show.
So this is a photo of you actually giving a tour in the Salem area, correct, Sam?
Yeah, and that's actually right outside of where I saw the man with a hat, by the way. So that building is right next to the hotel, and I couldn't say on national television what hotel it was, but the hotel is literally right next door. That's Wicked Good Books, which is a bookstore, and that is strange that photo is the one photo I have of me giving a tour, but that's where I saw the man with the hat.
Wow, that's amazing. All right, let me pop that back off, and we're back.
Definitely on my bucket list. Salem is like huge for me, so I have to come see you.
It's and talk about like I was scheduled to give tours again this year. I renewed my tour guide license, and I've been giving tours on and off for about 10 years in Salem. And I decided because of the COVID, that the numbers are starting to spike again in Massachusetts, that it's probably not a good year to do tours. But I would highly recommend, after all this COVID crazy, to visit Salem. Visit during the summer, like June, July is a really good time to visit. And you got to do October at least one time in your life.
It's a beautiful town. I love that town. It's beautiful.
Yeah, we went up to Salem town before. It was fantastic. It was really a lot of cool stuff.
Yeah.
If you like history and or the paranormal, it's a great spot.
Both. Yes.
Well, that brings up another question for me for Sam, because you are a historian and having that interest in the history alone, let alone the paranormal background that usually follows historic buildings and places that have an amount of history with them. How do you find that those two interests correlate? Because I would think that would be like a nail to a hammer, chasing history facts and then running into paranormal.
Yeah, so my clairvoyance has really helped me as a historian. I think, I'm not psychic, but I'm more of when it comes to like my gifts, I'm more of a psychometrist. And a psychometrist is where you you could touch an object and you could pick up the energy from the past from that. So I started off as a psychometrist and kind of like evolved into clairvoyant. So I would get a lot of information from the spirits, and people are like, "How do you know that?" I'm like, and so it really helps me find the evidence that I need to have to be able to back my story. And I'll tell you, like, I was the first to write about Proctor's Ledge, which is where the actual executions took place in Salem. I wrote about it in 2013, and they went public with it in 2017. And I'm like, I'm the one that I was the first person to write about this. So not to toot my own horn. They had a whole committee of like scholars and people looking for evidence for the location at Proctor's Ledge. And I already, because of my abilities, I kind of already pinpointed where it was. So long story short, just kind of trust what I say, that that it's going to eventually, like, there will be fact to be able to back up what I say or what I dig up, because I don't say it unless I strongly believe that it's true. And with the Salem witch trials, there's a lot of misinformation, and I've spent a lot of my time as a historian untangling all the misinformation, like the innocent men and women, they were not burned at the stake. A lot of people think that thinks Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, she was, but they were hanged. There was a lot of misinformation when it comes to where things took place. And we saw there was a show on the Travel Channel that was on last October in Salem, and I refused to be a part of that show because it got the history incorrect. So I will abstain from working on a television show if they do not strive for historical accuracy. That's something that's very important to me.
Sure.
Totally understandable.
Very much so. Paranormal integrity. That's what that's called. Yeah.
We need more of that too. We are our own PR firm in this field. We are the figureheads, especially when you have exposure to doing tours with the public. You've been on television. You've done broadcasts before. You're a front runner representative of the field as much as anybody else who does stuff. So when we a lot of times we've talked about this with Tony and Chris and Audra and Cherie and Joe. A lot of us, the jargon we use, the way we frame certain things, the way we refer to stuff, we can often taint our own pool, so to speak. We can also, so it's really important that what we put out there to represent what we do and the field we do it in is done properly, correctly, with integrity. You hold yourself to a standard. You don't worry about what standard people hold you to. You do everything the certain way, and that's it. And that's so I admire that.
Well, it's so true. And something as important as the history of a place that, is usually relatively easy to go look up. I mean, especially with internet today. If you were to overlook and get the history wrong, that alone would taint, like Sam said, the integrity of the rest of the show. And what else are you seeing that either A, maybe is a mistake or isn't correct, or even worse, completely falsified? So I give you credit for that, Sam. That's a very good move.
Yeah. I will say this though, guys, is Salem is very complex. And I think that you have a lot of these shows come in and they'll read, they'll like read The Crucible. And I spent years of like saying The Crucible was a great work of fiction. Like so that was not what really happened in 1692. A lot of the names were correct, but not the players. It was kind of recreated for as an allegory. So you get a lot of TV shows thinking that The Crucible is historical fact, and like, oh, I know all about the Salem witch trials. No, you don't. People spend years and years and years researching it, and so it's one of those things that you can't kind of just get in a couple of weeks, or just doing an internet search on Wikipedia. You have to dig really deep for the stories associated with the Salem witch trials.
Working with the public, right, and then doing tours, you get to talk to people from all walks of life, all over the place. What, if you can remember, what would be probably the most absurd or humorous thing somebody on the tour came over to you and listen, I don't know if you know this or not, but people else were hung here.
We're bad.
Well, I'll tell you, like I had like a lot of people, oddly, that would go on my tours over the years, that they would say that they're like, oh, I'm related to Rebecca Nurse, and it happened like every day. Like it was like there was always somebody that had some ties to the Salem witch trials. So apparently, Rebecca Nurse had a gazillion grandchildren. But I think the thing that I would get in arguments, like people kind of know who I am now, but when I first started, I would get in arguments about ergot poisoning. Do you guys know what that is?
No.
Ergot. So it's basically moldy bread, and there's a whole theory that the afflicted girls in Salem, that they ate the moldy bread and that caused them to kind of like have like LSD trips, and that's why they were convulsing and barking like dogs. And the whole ergot poisoning is a great theory, but I talk a lot about it in my books and Wicked Salem, and ergot probably would not have happened. If they had it, they would have lost body parts. It would have been a fatal, like toxic thing. Like they would lose like their ears or their noses if they had, in fact, ergot poisoning. So, and if you look at all the girls, including my cousin Ann Putnam Jr., she did not have any physical signs of ergot poisoning. So I think that's the biggest thing of like people arguing with me about ergot poisoning. Now the burning of the witches, that comes up all the time. They're like, where were they burned? Even my mother, who is, I consider she's a wonderful genealogist. She's the one that uncovered the fact that I'm related to the Putnam family. She's like, my mother's Southern. She's like, Sam, and I'm like, yes, Mom. And she's like, I think we burned witches. I'm like, Mom, they were hanged, and give me some names. So she basically uncovered the whole ties to the Putnam family through Ancestry.com. And then I'm also related to Lizzie Borden as well. And
I remember you mentioning that, Sam, that you had a relation to Lizzie Borden as well.
I'm sorry, Tony. I was going to say, no, you have so much of a spiritual connection You got a lot going on.
Yeah.
I'm related to like all the bad guys. Like, what's up with that?
All right, Sam. The whole world wants to know: did she do it?
Yeah. Well, some of you guys are part of the Dark Zone TV, and I'm really excited about being part of the Halloween event as well. I do think that she did it, and I do think so. Something that came from those 3 days of me being there on that Saturday night with Susan Slaughter, and also the remote viewing. That I don't know if you guys saw the remote viewing, the people coming in and like remote viewing at the location. I strongly think that Bridget Sullivan, the maid, along with Lizzie Borden, committed the murders. I think that Bridget was involved, but may have not committed the murders. I think Crazy Lizzie did it. She was kind of under the influence of an entity or possession, and I think that Bridget, one of them dressed as a man, and I know that sounds weird, but I got that over and over again. That one of them dressed as a man, as sort of like throughout when the murders were happening, just to kind of like I guess if they were caught, they could say a man committed the murder. But I think Bridget and Lizzie committed the murders together.
I agree with you, Sam. I mean, Lizzie definitely had an involvement, and Bridget, whether she actually had a physical involvement or even just a mental involvement, knowing it was going to happen, she did, no doubt about it. And then the only other person I might place in that is John Morris, Uncle John. Yeah. He might have been the man that you're picking up on, or like you said, maybe one of them dressed up, but definitely between those three, I think your suspects lie.
Yeah, I remember when you did the spirit box.
We even said plain as day,
John,
Uncle. Yeah,
Uncle John came up in the spirit box.
So Sam, I gotta ask you a question. I normally don't do this when we're live. What is the room behind you with the gray doors?
Oh, that's my bedroom. Okay. This is my haunted apartment.
I keep seeing a little short, dark lady with a bun in her hair and a dark dress keep peeking through that door.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and okay. it's distracting.
It's not me, Chris, right? Because I have a bun.
No, it's not you.
Safe. Short lady with a bun.
And short lady.
I just keep peeking through the door, and it's driving me crazy. I had to say something. So
yeah, it's I say it's my not haunted apartment, but as you can tell, I mean, I have spirit guides. Yeah. The lady with the bun, I'll tell you, like I don't know if that's not my grandmother, but there's a woman that's kind of been following me for a while, and that could be her. At the S.K. Pierce Victorian Mansion, I kept having recurring dreams with her. It could be related to Lizzie Borden too, because we're talking about her. I just got chills talking. I don't want to bring her here, but I'm very connected to Lizzie Borden or Lizbeth. I'm very connected. Not only am I related to her, but I'm very connected to her.
It's definitely
S.K. Pierce is another really good place too.
Yeah. Oh, the mansion.
S.K. Pierce, yeah. I took my son for his first investigation up there like a year or so ago, and it did not disappoint. It was really good.
And I always thought that the woman with a bun, and that's weird that you say that, was Maddie Cornwell. So there was a maid that was at that house, and this woman's been following me ever since. And I thought that would be her, but I'll figure it out I can. I'm assuming that she's not bad. It's just someone that's probably following me around or looking out for me.
It's a curious peek. Like she doesn't know what's going on. I just keep seeing it.
I think I'm seeing.
Since you said that, Chris, I've been watching too. And I swear I've seen it peek out 3 or 4 times since you said that.
And it's weird. Like earlier, like I tried to put up my poster behind me, and it, like whoever or something kept kind of like pushing it down. I'm like, stop it.
Can we go full screen Sam and like study this for a minute? This is
sure. Let's take a look. Hold on. Let me bring up Sam full screen and let's see what we've got.
No idea you're going to behind your own this degree, huh?
I know, right?
And there's nobody with me. I'm by myself here, and That doesn't surprise me that you say that, because I definitely have had people tell me that before. And even when I was doing the Estes method at the Hawthorne Hotel, there was a woman with a bun in the room with me too, so it could be her as well. So that's something that it could be the same person from the Estes method. And when you guys played the Estes method, she kind of came back to communicate.
Yeah, very well could be. But did any of you see it poke just one or two times while I had it full screen? I don't know if it's shadows. I can't tell what that light.
On his
In the little space,
yeah, on that right
shoulder.
It could be shadow reflection
Yeah,
when he moves in front of it.
Oh, that?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's from one of my lights in my apartment.
I think that's what it is, but I could be wrong. But that's what it appears.
I wouldn't be surprised that you say that. I wouldn't be surprised that it's someone that it's someone's here. I don't want it to be, because I always say over and I'm like, this is my not haunted apartment, and I always reiterate that spirits are not allowed here, and it's like my safe zone. And I can go out in the field and communicate all day, but when I come home, I want to have kind of like a spirit-free zone.
Sure.
Even in our car, we also have spirits.
We have them everywhere, but that's because we've never kicked them out.
Right.
And that's our fault.
That's true.
Because you keep using that damn Evox in the house.
Because it works.
Yeah. We do the same thing. We do European direct radio voice sessions, and I can't afford to rent a place every week to do that. But that methodology is you build a routine and you build a connection bridge, and you do it over and over and over again. So for us to do it, we decided, we keep it safe. We do certain things for, to protect ourselves and cleanse afterwards. But, we've made the conscious choice to do that for the research. We're logging data and everything we can. But that was always, for the longest time, when I just did field stuff and not other research, that was my home, was my sanctuary. So when I had the attachment problem, it does feel almost like you're being violated by someone who's not only infringing upon your personal space, but they're not paying rent. So it's like,
Right, exactly.
Kick them out.
You don't have a privacy also.
No, that's for sure. So true.
Probably important to point out too, Sam, that Chris here is he has a law enforcement background, and he's extremely sensitive and empathic. So if anybody's going to find something like that in a live feed, that's the guy.
Yeah, very true.
I mean, that's good to know, because I think that first of all, having being sensitive and working in law enforcement, that's a really good pairing of abilities. Because I have done, as a clairvoyant, I have done some work on some cases, and I did a book called Mass Murders, where I revisited a lot of crimes that happen. And I'll tell you, the being sensitive will help you. It'll help you solve the crime, or give a voice to the victim and not to the perpetrator. And I think that's something that we should rely more on when it comes to cases, especially cold cases.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Very good point.
It also helps to tell when somebody's feeding you full of shit too. It's like, oh, come on, man, that was a lie, and that was a lie, and then they just look at you and go, "What? Oh, how did you know that?"
Chris, where are you?
We're in North Carolina. We're in Charlotte.
Okay, because I was just wondering, because I think that that some locations are more open to that than other locations. I think, I grew up in the Panhandle of Florida, and it was very religious. So it was like they were like Jesus, because if you had the gift, then they would, it was from the devil, and I think that up here it's definitely different. I think that people are a little bit more open-minded when it comes to using psychics or clairvoyance in field work. But I think that it really does work. We may not get the answers for you, but we can give you clues. And you take those clues and you can use the clues to find the evidence that you need to find to be able to solve the case. I do that all the time, but it's not always like murder cases. It's sometimes like a locket that's buried on the property at the Oliver House kind of thing. And where is that locket? So a lot of times it's like finding objects, but then other times it's actual crimes.
Yeah. Very, very good point. Very good point.
And we've talked about this amongst ourselves on episodes before too, is that no methodology, no piece of equipment, nothing is 100% infallible in its garnering of evidence or proof or whatever it is. So it always pains me when someone who can do what you do nails something and they'll attribute it to luck or chance. And then if you don't get something, they go, "Oh, see, it's not legit." It's like that happens with every piece of equipment. You go to a copy machine, sometimes it chews up your page like it's going to a wood chipper, and sometimes it works. And that's a copy machine. So it happens everywhere. It's not, but we get held to a different standard, which is not fair.
No.
That's true.
You're absolutely right, Ron. It has to do with that whole explanation we did for Strange Oddities last week about how you balance the paranormal with science, and the fact that, like we were saying, paranormal doesn't react in 3 sets of 3 tests and produce the same results every time. Right. And so, there's all sorts of complications, which we talked about, but you're right. There's not a piece of paranormal equipment out there that was actually made to detect paranormal. It can be used for it, but that usually is not its sole purpose, except for maybe some of the newer devices brought in today. But okay, dowsing rod. There are some examples, and there are some ones that were those definitely are. But some of the newer stuff that is used, like trimeters and all sorts of EMF meters and all sorts of other equipment, really had a different sole purpose in mind for it, and we've brought it into the paranormal to try to use it for those purposes. But yeah, that's
so
good.
Now I have a question. Maybe I'm wrong, but I thought dowsing rods were really originally just to find water.
For water.
Yeah, that's true.
Water or cave.
And it became. Okay.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, you can find water, but also bodies too. Like, you could say, like, can you show me where you're buried, and it'll point to that. And then they started using it for yes or no questions. These are charged by a high priestess, not Dana, but another high priestess in Salem, and they've been very accurate for me. Some people, like, they can hold the dowsing rods and they'll they won't do anything, or they'll spin around. But these, when I found the right pair, I use them. They're like people say I'm like human dowsing rods. It's like, because I'm always with my dowsing rods everywhere I go. But yeah, you're right. It was originally intended to find water back in the day.
But I've seen them work. I've seen them work, like, really yes or no questions. Finding. I've seen them work for the paranormal. Absolutely, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Sri.
I have a question, Sam. So aside from dowsing rods, so what else do you bring when you do investigation? What equipments?
So I just kind of grabbed some stuff. So I have a spirit box. I don't like this one. I like a spirit box 7, but I just kind of grabbed this one because this one, it goes to the stations too fast, and there's a lot of static involved.
Yes, box.
We have one.
Yeah, we have one too, and we agree. Same thing. The SP7 operates much smoother.
And I like because I'm a reporter. I was a reporter, so I like my digital recorder, and I do a lot of burst sessions out in the field. I do, I like to kind of like do hacks. So I'll come up with I do a grid with like Christmas lights and things like that, because it's fun. It's kind of fun to do. But Tony and Cherie, like the box that you guys had on whatever that box was, like, where do you get that?
we built it.
Oh, you built it. Okay.
We actually built that from scratch using that was probably the 14th or 15th one we've built, and we upgraded it every time. In fact, right now we are working on the 2.0 version of it, which will be more advanced. It'll be smaller, lighter, and we're working on it right now to take to the Queen Mary.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
I actually have the original Evox. He gave it to me as a gift. I'm waiting until he gets to the 15th one, and then it's going up on eBay.
Did you guys use the e-box out in the field a lot when you go?
We do. We've used it from everything from haunted locations, historical sites,
residential,
and we'd even taken it to private home investigations. Right. I think the last one we took it to, Chris, we took it to a friend of yours that was having trouble.
Yeah, Cisco's house.
Yeah, Francisco's house, and it brought back some unbelievable results with the questioning, and we used it.
Lizzie Borden now.
Well, we used it live on Lizzie Borden. We used it live on The Conjuring, but the Queen Mary will really be the real test of it because A, we'll actually have it on location, and two, we got a brand new version we're creating, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, so you guys are going to be at the Queen Mary.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, because this time I'm going to be doing it remotely. But yeah, so so now we can switch roles because I was at the Lizzie Borden house. So.
Right, exactly.
And I got to tell you, Tony's e-box is phenomenal. That private home investigation that we did, that buddy of mine, the first initial investigation we went in, Tony uses e-box, and he got multiple responses from males and females. It told us there was 7 spirits. It told us there was 8 spirits. We went back for a second investigation. We brought Joe Thompson with us, and Joe and I focused on there was a portal in the closet, and we actually closed it down and had to go back a third time because something was opening up another portal where spirits were coming in, which in Tony's evox got him every time he turned that thing on. It was getting multiple spirits. It was telling us it was males, females, and every time it wasn't the same. So once we dialed in the portals and closed it down, it was completely dead. But Tony's
after that
to begin with.
Yeah, you're right, Chris, and it did help with that. But the number of spirits, when it first said it, I was amazed when it said 7 or 8 because I mean it wasn't a huge house. It was big enough, but it wasn't huge. Mm-hmm. But then to find out later on the second return that there was a portal not only in the closet, but we found one. Joe found one in the backyard too, and there were actually two spirits out in the backyard that he removed as well. So interesting stuff.
I will say this, and I'm kind of like old school in my equipment, but when I saw that box, Tony and Cherie, I'm like, that's the real deal. And I talked to Susan about it too, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, like she was trying to figure out what was going on." It definitely there's that box. I mean, it's special, so you're on to something, and I'm hoping to get one.
There's a list. Ron sent me a message today. He said, "What we got to do is we got to connect Tony with the evox and eBay." I think Ron made a joke, and I was like, "Oh no, not yet. We only have the one so far."
Next time you see the spirit that looks like Santa Claus, that's what you ask for.
There you go.
That's the vibe.
But yeah, Susan,
Tony's
I know Susan has very curious about it as well. So hopefully she'll get a chance to see it, play with it a little bit too. We'll see what happens. We'll see how it works.
I think Susan is our next guest, right? Next week.
Rob is next week, but Susan is on with us 2 weeks from tonight.
2 weeks from tonight. Okay.
So before we go any further, I want to talk about Sam, some of the tours and stuff that you did in Salem, and some of the history behind what you call the Blue Lady.
So okay. So I did, there was a show called Most Terrifying Places that I was on, and what's interesting about that show, I filmed it last year, and I was recounting my situation with the man with a hat, and that part got cut. Thank God I did, because it wouldn't have ended up on Paranormal Nightshift. But then I recounted the story of the lady in the blue dress. So there's a whole story of a woman who's been spotted by multiple people in Salem. It's at Rockefeller. It's on the corner of Essex Street and Washington Street. They see the spirit of this woman in a blue dress. And the whole backstory, and of course it's Salem. They basically said that she was pregnant. She was waiting for her lover to show up. She tells her that she's pregnant. He flips out. He takes her, slams her against the brick wall. She dies from.
Okay, hold on a second, Sam. I actually have a clip.
Oh, okay.
That you gave me. So let me play that, and then we'll come back to going further into it. So here comes that clip for our audience. What happened? Give me 1 second. I have to close this. Okay, here comes that clip.
There's a whole legend of the Lady in Blue. The Lady in Blue has been spotted by multiple people. According to the story, in 1840, there was a woman wearing blue. She was waiting for her lover, and she had a secret to tell him. The secret was that she was pregnant. When she told him the secret, he flipped. Killed her, and he left her there to die. But then, when her body was there lifeless, he took the body and he buried it in the bowels of the Rockefellers building.
Wow. Just amazing story, and love the video to go with it. That was awesome. I think that was from actually the Travel Channel, but that was very cool. So sorry, go ahead and explain more of what you were saying if the video didn't cover it for you.
Well, so like my whole backstory with the Lady in the Blue Dress, I really don't think that story is accurate. If you really dig to the historical backstory to it, they say that was an old church back in the early days of Salem, and then it burned down, and then so there was this whole story that she was waiting and she was buried, and then like you hear her screaming from the vaults below at Rockefeller's. And I'll tell you though, but we tell that story over and over and over again. I think that maybe she's a thought form, and you guys know what like a thought form or a tulpa.
Yeah.
Like she's almost like she's been created because her story's been told over and over and over again. And Tony, did you get the picture that I sent you?
I did. I was just gonna say, let's bring up that photograph. Okay. So let me bring that up so our audience can see it, because this is I don't want to give it away, but this is a cool photograph.
Oh my God.
And let me share this and see if I can keep us all in the screen at the same time. And there.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So no doubt, human figure, not a doubt in the world. Definitely a blue dress, and you can see shoulders, you can see facial structure. That's amazing photo, Sam.
Yeah, and if you look at the photo, it's like that's kind of like zoomed in on it a little bit, but it's right at the location where I filmed that episode of Most Terrifying Places. This was shot on one of my tours, and it was like right after telling her story. So I do think that the person didn't know the whole story of the Lady in the Blue Dress when she shot it, so she wasn't like looking for it. And I do think that there's something definitely there. I've heard screaming coming from that area. Even like the time that I was featured on Paranormal Nightshift, like when I saw the man with the hat, I also heard a screaming woman as well that same night. So I have a feeling that maybe it's tied somehow. But she definitely is terrifying.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I'm gonna try to just zoom in on this a little bit. See if I can keep it in frame here, but
we're zooming ourselves in.
Looks like she's wearing blue dress.
Oh, no doubt about it, she is.
And you can see the
you can see complete outline of everything, her entire body form, and to capture that distinctly, that's incredible.
That is incredible.
And when the person that shot the photo on my tour, she didn't know what I saw. I'm like, wait a minute, what's that? And she's like, oh my God.
Wow.
And there was nobody in the hallway when she shot it. It's crazy.
Wow.
I mean, it gives me validation. I've told that story for so many years. And I feel if she really was, a woman that was pregnant, waiting for her boyfriend, and her boyfriend killed her, I would stick around too. I would want post-mortem revenge on that. So I'm hoping that with her specifically, if she actually was a person and not a tulpa or a thought form, that I can tell her story and hopefully give her peace.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. And a lot of times just that receiving that and getting that peace is enough to change the entire situation in itself. So definitely a good thing to be able to do that.
I would like to bring your e-box Tony and Cherie, to Salem.
You know what? We'd love to bring it there.
And then we could do a session right at that location.
We can go.
Yeah, we just need to find out what COVID's planning on doing. But as soon as that goes away, there are so many things we want to do and so many places we want to take that. And especially the new one we're building, because I think it'll do even more. But you know what, Sam, as soon as...
So there's no flying broom, right?
Well, the good thing about COVID is the ghosts don't have it.
That's right.
No, true.
That's true.
But people on planes do, and everything in between getting there. But yeah, as soon as we find out what's going on and hopefully things die down, we want to be able to bring it out into any place anybody wants to see it operate. So we'll definitely want to do that as well.
And as we saw with the Lizzie Borden experiment, like you can do it remotely too. Like maybe we could do something where I'm at the location and then you guys do the box session, kind of like what Dana and I did as well. Because I think that this is the time to do experiments that are, even if you're not at the location, to do like the kind of the virtual experiments to communicate with spirit. And we're finding that it actually works.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. And it does work remotely. It works a lot better if it's in the actual location, but it doesn't keep it from working even if it's not. And remote, we've been successful with that on many occasions, and not just with the Evox, but Ron has had similar success doing what's called direct radio voice, where they tune into either shortwave frequencies or medium wave frequencies that have no surrounding signal to them, and they get responses to questions, and you hear talking and amazing stuff. But yeah, that can be done easily.
Yeah, it's no radio emissions. It's just on a static channel with nothing, and then we'll filter it sometimes in the moment to hear it clearer. And one of the gentlemen who's also on Paranormal Nightshift, Anthony Simonelli, who's watching tonight also, he lives in Queens. He'll remote in through Google Duo, and we'll have him on the phone so we can see him. So just as like a week or two ago, actually in the last week or two, we're doing a direct radio session, and he says something entered. He's sensitive also. Something entered his room. Something entered the room. He felt it. He could see it. Shortly after that, he sees the same greenish, dark, misty kind of thing walk behind us on the couch. And so when he's telling me this, I'm reacting, and he's got my full attention. And then all of a sudden we heard, and I'm like, what was that? And then she got up, and so we have a little crucifix thing on the bookshelf, and it fell off right after he said that he saw something walk behind us.
At that same moment.
At the same moment.
That same moment. Could it have itself? Possibly, but it was very interesting that it happened at that exact moment.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Coincidences don't always happen like that.
Yeah. Right. So,
that's why it's interesting. Yep.
Yeah. So true. So true. So, Sam, is there anything that you want to plug or anything you've got coming up you want to talk about? Let our audience know what's going on.
Sure. Yeah. So, this year, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able during October. I decided not to give tours this year in Salem. Doesn't mean I won't be giving tours in 2021. So after all this COVID crazy, hopefully goes away or we get the vaccine, then we'll have it back in 2021. I'm looking forward to doing, it's called the Wicked Virtual Film Festival. It's on October 30th through the 31st. I'm also going to be part of the darkzone.tv as well, but I'm not going to be at the Queen Mary, unfortunately. That would be awesome. But I'm on the East Coast. But what's going to be cool about this is kind of breaking news. So the Wicked Virtual Film Festival is actually going to stream on the darkzone.tv.
Oh,
so,
nice.
Yeah. So you guys got breaking news there. But yes, it's going to be on one of the ISO cameras on the Friday. So if you purchase the tickets for the darkzone.tv, you'll be able to watch the film festival. We have Brandon Alvis from A&E's Ghost Hunters. His film Cemetery Park is going to play. We have a lot of like paranormal themed documentaries that are playing, plus a classic, House on Haunted Hill.
Nice.
My favorite movie.
That's awesome.
And so it's a 13-hour film fest that's also going to be playing on the darkzone.tv.
Awesome.
That's very cool.
Interesting.
I started at the Queen Mary. I miss going. I used to live out in LA when I started, and we've gone back on vacations this year for the same obvious reason. We didn't travel back, but yeah, that's one of my favorite places to go.
Can't wait to go back. I miss going.
I know. One of these times.
It's got unbelievable paranormal activity. We were out 3 years ago, I think, as of today, right?
Right, as of today.
Yeah. But unfortunately, the boat was so busy at the time. But we still caught evidence, just not half as much as we probably could have if it wasn't as busy as it was. But it just has such a wide range of activity because there were so many people on it at certain times in history and loss of life and all sorts of other things. But, Peter James just caught tons of stuff when he did massive amounts of research on it. And, some of his work is still being, looked at today because of the interactions he's had. So we're really excited to be able to go back and see what we can capture and bring to light of what's happening on that ship. So
I'm a little jealous. That's one of my favorite places because
I know we were planning going.
I'm surprised. I'm disappointed we don't get to go, but I'm excited for you guys. That place is just, the energy on that ship is just phenomenal for anybody that's sensitive. And you can literally step out onto the deck, bend down and put your hand on the floor, and you can see and feel the people walking along as if they were taking a cruise. And then you just take a moment and you take a deep breath, then you can feel the soldiers marching up and down the ship. That place is phenomenal. One of my most favorite places in the world.
I think we all feel the same because the Queen Mary also, it holds a special place in my heart. I mean, you guys know this. It was the first place that I heard my first disembodied voice. So
wow.
it just has this place. I love the Queen Mary. I love the Queen Mary. It's beautiful.
I'll tell you guys, I've been doing some remote viewing on the Queen Mary, and the woman with the bun may be from the Queen Mary. Just a heads up. Yeah,
that's possible.
And so I've been communicating with a woman on the Queen Mary, a spirit on the Queen Mary. So it's very possible that she's coming to talk to us about her being on the Queen Mary.
Oh,
she's not bad. She's a positive spirit.
Yeah, I don't get anything to get from it.
In all the years I've been doing this, I got 2 really good photographic captures. 2. Yeah. So for the people out there who want to know the realistic captures, and we don't capture Class A this and that like every other day. 2, and they were both on the ship. Actually, one of them I love to show you. It's a full hooded robe shadow figure. It looks almost like Jinn, to be honest. At the doorway to one of the boiler rooms. It was sobering when I found it in the photo because there was nothing in the doorway when I took it. And to this day, sometimes when you overthink and then the little skeptical part of your mind goes, well, maybe, I don't know this time. And then I look at that picture, I go, oh, never mind.
So I'm picking up like when I was remote viewing, there's something elemental on that ship. There's like an elemental, and the USS Salem has an elemental as well. And that's kind of what I'm going to be talking about. I don't want to give too much away. But there's something about ships, and I think you can't really cleanse ships, or you can't do a smudge because you can't like light candles or sage on a vessel. I'm not sure if you can on the Queen Mary, but I know in the USS Salem you cannot. But I think why are elementals attracted to ships? Like that's something that I'm going to be talking about.
Ships are never grounded.
Right.
Never grounded. So just my theory.
I didn't touch it.
I just pulled up your picture, Ron, because I was going to show it.
Oh my God,
and it is so freaking out. It's zooming in on its own. I'm not even touching the computer. God. This is unbelievable. I'm not even touching it. Let me see if I can get to share this. Hold on.
Share it, please.
Uh-oh.
I told you to put Tony's Pornhub search from earlier.
So Sam, okay, hold on. Now it's not. Where'd it go?
It's right there.
It's because it's a movie. I zoomed in.
Yeah.
Okay, here it comes. Hold on. It's because this is the picture Ron was talking about. It's a zoom. So you can see the figure standing in the doorway.
I remember that when you guys were on. Yep.
And Ron, you said there's no door handle on that door, right?
No, the door is flush mount. There's a push bar on the other side. The guy Matt Schultz, who does the tours there, he always tries to explain things, which he should. But he was flabbergasted by the hand And so the two lights in the background are perimeter lights that go around that whole corner. They're shining under it where it looks like it's like people that wear white shoes. No one's wearing all black and putting on white sneakers. That would be a fashion faux pas, let alone anything to do. It's casting forward shadow. Yeah.
All right. I had
So
to,
which part is this?
I had to
in
show
premiere?
that. That's boiler room 3.
Okay, boiler room.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
Room 3. I remember that room. Yeah.
The
So-
amazing thing is that it's casting forward shadow. That's
And
like
it's opaque,
crazy.
and it's partly opaque.
Right.
Right.
It's about a 6-foot door frame.
What do you guys think that is? Like, what are you picking up on that?
I thought it was gin. I honestly thought it was. I thought it was gin.
And element, I would say Jim's kind of in the elemental
Range.
range.
Yeah.
What do you get from it, Sam? I mean, obviously, I'm empathic, but I don't have the same abilities that you do at all.
I'm just basing it on my personal experience, and I'm getting elemental, and so and Jen, I don't have a lot of experience with Jen, but I do. It's like in the same school as Jen or elemental.
Spectrum, yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you, Tony, for showing.
Yeah, it's a fascinating capture. I don't know exactly where it falls within the realm of paranormal, but I wouldn't say it's probably the nicest of the figures wandering around the Queen Mary.
I mean, I hate. This is what I got. I'll say I got Soul Collector.
Very well could be.
That's interesting because I was just gonna say that I'm getting a message from it, like I am the keeper. I am the keeper. So that's kind of in relation to that. That's weird. That's weird.
If you know what, if I may exploit the moment, because you get to talk to someone like Sam, and obviously Chris is really dialed in, which is I'm finding more and more every week we do this show. There are some people who believe that you catch something like that, and it's like shooting an arrow with a blindfold and nailing a bullseye. You just happen to get it. There's some people who believe that they show themselves to you, and that's the reason you got it. They permitted it. How do you read that? What would you say in this instance that is?
I think that in your situation, that it knew that you were going to show it on like a show like this.
Show himself. That would be
Completely agree.
Yep.
It wanted you to know it was there.
Yeah.
No doubt about it.
And it's almost like it wanted you to send the message, hey, I am here. You are going to be reaching out to a lot of people. Let them know that I am here.
Right.
That's what I'm getting from it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's in the book Ghosts of the Queen Mary. They published it and they vetted the photo to make sure. I just remember it was two of us facing that way up front, and then there was like 40 people on the tour. They oversold it, and everybody except the guide Matthew was facing that door. Nobody had security clearance to be ahead of the group. So 5-6 hours later, 7 hours later, I'm home looking through photos, and my jaw just dropped, and I went, "Wait, what?" And I pinch zoomed in, and for me, still that is for visual proof or evidence that there is something more to this world than we know.
Oh yeah,
That's still my sobriety card right there.
Completely agree. And awesome capture. But like even the position of it, the way that it's standing, one leg forward, one leg back, like just flaunting itself, saying, "Yeah, I'm right here."
And the little bony hand.
You know what? I just had a really weird connection. When Audra and I went to the ship, we did the overnight investigation with Matt, as a matter of fact. And we were in the belly of the ship, the big open portion where you look up, and at the top there's a row of windows that almost like it's looking down. Mm-hmm. And I kept telling Audra when we were in that room that I felt like something was watching us, but it wasn't watching us because it was curious. It was like monitoring what we were doing. And for some reason, your photo just clicked a connection with me, and I don't know why. It's super interesting. That just really clicked inside me right now for some reason. That's weird. It almost related the two together with what I saw up in the windows when we were doing the investigation to your photo. I don't know why. It's what I'm feeling right now. It's weird.
Wow.
I'm thinking we need to organize a field trip, and Mr. Baltrusis needs to come with us.
Yeah.
I definitely I wanted to go. I've wanted to go for many years, but I've been going kind of like telepathically. So now I want to see like if it matches up with what I was getting, because I'm kind of new to remote viewing. I've been able to do it since I was a child, but I'm doing it now for the show, the darkzone.tv, and I'll tell you, it's amazing.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
it's legit too. I think that's one of those things that people from the general public who aren't educated on how a lot of the paranormal work, that's one of those things that they think is kind of like, oh yeah, that stuff, whatever. But they've tested. That's one of those things that has been tested. The Professor Charles Tart out of UC Berkeley had done experiments. He had someone in a chamber asleep, and they were strapped down so they couldn't get up. And he put a piece of paper on an elevated shelf in another room, and he asked her to come back with what was written on the paper, and she was able to do it. It did happen, and so there's the odds
refuting that, yeah,
of guessing that or pulling that off would be beyond astronomical.
Right. Yeah. Beyond astronomical. Those odds would be off the charts and would never happen. So be able to do that. Yeah. No doubt about it.
Yeah. I would stay away from that. If we did go back to the Queen Mary, or go to the Queen Mary, I want to stay away from that spirit because that entity is not good.
Yeah, that I would definitely agree with. All right. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Sam, for coming on, for taking the last hour and a half to speak with us. Tell us about what you were doing. This was absolutely fantastic, and we greatly appreciate it.
Well, it was great to talk to you, and it was good to see that photo was worth it. That was amazing, and just having a conversation with people that I've seen in the field and have respect for. So thank you so much for having me on your show.
We feel the same way.
Yeah, we feel the same way. This was great. This was great. Chris, you want to give our closing line?
Remember this: no matter what you're doing, no matter where you're at. Whether you're listening to the history, listen to the guy giving the tour. He knows what he's talking about. And don't ever, ever, ever forget to stay haunted. All right, guys.
All right. I'm going to say good night to our audience. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for tuning in and listening. And have a wonderful night.
Bye, guys.
Good night.
Bye, guys.
Night.